Okay, so this is a big topic that we try to make as understandable as possible, and I learned this. I learned all this from somebody else. It always astounds me when you get teased or made fun of. Oh, these people just went somewhere else and found this information and bring it to us. And I'm thinking to myself, isn't that how people learn? We go to somebody else who does know. We're either scientists or we're learners. So I did some genetic courses online. It didn't give me a degree in anything. It just further education. That's something available to everyone to take courses online. Again, I say it every time. I wasn't born knowing anything. I had to learn. I had to make mistakes. 10 years ago, some of this stuff I was saying wrong myself. Recessives is something I had to learn how this stuff works. So if we think about genetics as everything lives on on a locus. So there's one locus that you think of that as the two-strand DNA in a human. So there's two alleles on each locus. There's two inherited alleles on each locus. Um, so you get one from the mother and one from the father. So if we think of a locus, it can have 4 or 5 different options, and we'll get into that with the color stuff. That I'll be able to show you examples, but they will only inherit one thing from each parent. So I don't understand that those are named anything specific. I just know that it's similar to the way human DNA is in that we get one thing from each parent. So I don't, as far as what that strand is technically called or what those bars are, I don't know how that lines up with the canine part of it. Just when we talk about the inheritance of this stuff, it drops one from the mother and one from the father. So anything the mother or the father don't have, they won't get. Anything the mother and father do have, they have a possibility of getting. So most of in a recessive's case, the mother and father both have to carry in order for this to present as affected. So in a recessive trait, a carrier will be they've only inherited one of them, and then they got it from the father, say, or they didn't get it from the mother. That would be that wouldn't present. That would just be a carrier. So if they got the trait both from the mother and the father, then that would be an affected. And we call affected, even if we're talking about color, we still call that affected because it presents. So if you have a dilute dog and it gets a one gene from the dilute mother and father, they got so it's got two copies. It's possible for them to be affected dilute, which means you would see the dilute physically on the body. So a carrier of a trait will have no outward appearance of this trait. So if the dog carries, I'm going to use dilute a lot because it is a pretty hot topic in the breed, and it does occur in our breed. And I'm going to tell you how that's possible. A lot of people will just deny it outwardly, and when I show you how long this stuff can live, it recessives don't genes in a dog don't expire, but you so at any rate, I'm going to use dilute because it's easiest for us to see. So if a dog is blue, it means it has two copies of the dilute gene. We'll show this. I'll show this later when we're talking about color. But if it only has one copy of the dilute gene, you will not see this. This dog will be brindle. It will be fawn, no outward appearance, or it could be blocked too. No outward appearance. So there's no way for us to know by looking at a dog whether it's a carrier of a dilute. That's why we do DNA testing. So when you say, well, my dogs can't produce dilute without having done a DNA test, you're just shooting in the wind. You don't know that. So when we talk about things that drop from mother to father, this means it can drop from mother to father every single generation and never show up. If it only gets one copy here, mother, father, and it keeps just dropping from one line to another. The mother gets it, gives it to the daughter gives it to her daughter, to her daughter, to her daughter, and they don't expire. They don't evaporate. They don't just disintegrate. They don't go away. It can keep popping down the line forever, literally forever. And until it meets another dog who also kept that going from generation to generation to generation, you will never see it. And then that's how something could exist 400 years ago that we don't know about, not in this breed. but in another, another breed that's longer genetically. But and then just we do have to a little bit, but yeah. No. Mm-mm. Mm. It is. Yes. So if we talk about the breed, there was Presa type dogs, similar type dogs based on look, actions, temperament, purpose. What did this person need in a dog? What did this person need in a dog? Prior to the early 1980s, there was no even goal to make a breed. Late 70s possibly, and the first breed standard of the breed is 1989. Whatever people say about, oh, it's hundreds of years old, some kind of war dog, it's nuts. 1989 is when this Presa Canario became a thing. Unfortunately, we were not the best record keepings for what went into it. If this dog looked the part, maybe they didn't even know what the mix of that breed was, what that particular dog was. And then um, I don't know if this was the proper place what we intended to talk about this, but we would talk about breeds like the Doberman. Louis Doberman had a singular purpose in mind. I want to make this dog to look like this using these breeds, and this is my goal. In our breed, we have hundreds of different Louis Dobermans that all have a goal, might not line up, all different things. Let's put this breed in, that breed in, Neo from here, Great Dane from here. Um, Sometimes it was, hey, what's in my backyard? That's as purposeless as it was. Now, we have to give credit to the more showy dogs over the islands because those are way more consistent than the working types that we talk about now. But the mixing is not more than 20, 30 years old. And yeah, and it was no, you can ask even if there's I me personally, I want to make sure people understand that I am not for the mixing of this breed. I think for anybody who's mixing the breed right now, with the exception of Maharero, which the Spanish club sanctions and gives paperwork for, over there. You don't have to do an initial registry, which is something that we still have open stud books over here. So in the US, we can do an open registry. But when you import these Maharero cross presses over here, they come with paperwork. You don't have to do that. So they come with paperwork and a pedigree. So with the exception of the Maharero that's being added now for vibrancy or whatever, for whatever reason, that's their breed. They can do that. I'm not going to tell them no. I'm not for any mixing. Anybody who's mixing needs to be called out, period. But there's mixing on they're probably all doing it. I don't have evidence of it. You can sometimes see it, but then we talk about how these old traits pop up. Just because something weird is popping up, it doesn't mean that it was mixed. It just looks like I'm talking about. If you talk about black and tan is a recessive trait. If 40 years ago we used a Spanish Alano, those come in black and tan, or we use something else. I mean, 40 years ago it's proven they use Rottweiler. So these things are dropping out one copy of this from generation to generation until we come 30 years later when it meets another dog who dropped from generation to generation, then we breed those together. The problem is the breed is getting popular. It's moving around the world. It's meeting up with lines that maybe wouldn't have met up. People are now starting to do line breedings and inbreedings, which will increase your likelihood of getting these recessive traits. So it's just the breed is it's not stable. The embark breed identification is is not up to the level that it should be to rely on. I personally have never had a dog that came back anything but 100%. I've never had to question anything, so I've been lucky in that thing. But I've seen some other dogs that are very valid, perfectly fine um, dogs that came up with something weird, and what are you gonna do? The embark doesn't know all the combinations. So if there were 100 breeders back in the day who all had a different goal and all used a different breed, how long do you think different breeds? They all used different breeds in their mix, and some used possibly mixed with 5 or 6 different breeds. Who knows? It's going to take a long time for embark to learn and understand all of those combinations. I also don't. I also don't agree when people are now something new has started to come lately where people say, well, as long as it's 87.5%. I mean, what? You can't. You're not going to get away with that in any other breed. But then again, back to the last point, no DNA test has learned Presa enough for us to rely on it 100%. We have many generations to do that. We need more people to add their DNA from all around the world. We need all these other combinations to get in there, and they'll once they learn it, it'll be better. But if you went to the Labrador club and said, "Hey, my dog is 87.5%," and then people say that's close enough. What? What? No. No. Yeah. So to make these two things as simple as possible, genotype is what's on the inside of the dog. Phenotype is what we can see on the outside of the dog. So that's simple. That's oversimplified, but that's basically what it is. Yes. Yeah. Well, these are equally important things. Honestly, we still have to judge the dog on the outside. The phenotype is the structured. The podcast we did on structure, that was all phenotype. It's all what we can see on the outside. But genotype is all the recessive little hidden things, and the colors and the disease traits, and everything that makes the dog look like it does on the outside, and then all the little hidden things on the inside. Yeah. No, yeah, go back a couple. So when we talk about recessive and dominant, so dominant don't require the both parent to carry it. This can be produced with just one copy. Dominant black would be it. Recessive again requires both parents to carry. Some examples of that is liver, black and tan, dilute. A lot of diseases, yeah, most diseases work that way. So if you're a carrier, you don't. There's no possibility. I mean, we'll talk about diseases at the end of this, but there's no possibility to have a disease. In rare cases there actually is, but we personally in our breed we don't have to worry about those, but most part it requires both parents to carry. So when we talk about there's two an allele from each parent drops onto each dog's locus, and there's many different loci for each color, and they kind of combine a little bit, but there'll be dominant and recessive alleles on each loci. But as the loci don't work, they do work independently for the in a lot of cases, but they can also interact and say there's one trait on this loci that is dominant on this loci, it can be recessive on another loci, meaning it's lower than a different trait. So it's a lot to comprehend, and I'm not going to go into a lot of how some of these combinations interact with each other. The only one is that the really important one is that it require on the K locus, it requires to be KY in order to express the fawn part of it. The fawn is the bottom base of our breed, and we'll talk about that. in a few. So I'm going to go. The next slides appear to be where we talk about a specific example of how a dog may inherit. And again, I'm going to use dilute because it's kind of something that does affect our breed. But this is a basic Punnett square. It's how things are inherited. And this is how the science tells us the dog's going to inherit. If the clear, the carrier are affected. Two clears are going to produce all clear dogs. That's the only that's really the only well this the top one and the bottom one are the only ones that are 100%. The rest of them are pretty random, but on paper, a clear and a carrier, 50% clear, 50% carrier. A clear and affected, 100% carrier. A carrier 25, 50, 25, and then carrier affected 50, 50. So some of these in the clear carrier section and the clear carrier sections, those can be random. So if I have a carrier, both parents are carriers, on paper, it's going to say 25% of these dogs can be affected if both are carriers. Now, when we say affected, it sounds bad, but it just means expresses the trait. It can be a disease, it can be a color. Um, but even though on paper it says, hey, 25% should be affected, the entire litter could be affected, or the entire litter could be not affected. That's the randomness of this. So you don't necessarily drop in a scientific matter. The mother may drop this one side into every puppy and not the affected side. You know what I mean? Um, so it is scientific to think about it and figure out how it happens, but it is random how it actually happens. So if we talk about dilute, all if both parents are carriers and you have four puppies, we're going to say, well, one of those should be a dilute, right? Should be affected. It could be all of them are. Every single puppy could be, or none of them, or 75% of them. So it really is random in that matter. But this we use these charts to kind of help people understand how these things are inherited. So we're going to do a specific example using dilute from perfectly normal looking parents. So the Brindle and Fawn, these are Connie Corsos. Sorry, they had they had the best photos I could steal online. So a Brindle and Fawn dog. Um, these are both perfectly colored dogs, beautiful dogs. We would breed them expecting nothing strange to happen if we didn't do any DNA. But as we breed them, the four puppies, we'll use four so I can easily not have to do the math. Well, we do a Punnett square on that. So these are both carriers of dilute, but we can't see that and we haven't DNA test, we don't know that. So the dominant D, that means non-carrier, and the recessive little d, that means carrier. So both these dogs have a carrier. As you can see, if we move these along, the next one, the first D on the side, the first D on the top drop into the first square. That's a non-affected, non-carrier. The next one, the big D drops and then the little d drops, that means non-affected, but it's a carrier. And the next one will also do that. And then the fourth one, both the little d's drop down. That's an affected carrier, and not a carrier. It's an affected dog. That'll be blue. So what we would get from that is three regular colored dogs. This is on paper again. They could all be dilute, and then one dilute dog. I, I can profess to be a 0% expert on anything that happens in the humans. I assume it is very is very similar, right? So the next slide shows how that would happen. So say we know for a fact Great Dane was used in this breed and they come in blue. We know for a fact Neo is used in the breed and they come in blue. Cane Corso is suspected to be used in the breed. They come in blue. And there's other breeds that came in blue. So if you use a black Great Dane back in the days, and this I'm using this as actual fact because we know it happened. That's how black got into it. I mean, we're talking many, many generations ago. So we're not angry about this. We're not angry about this. It's just how it happened. Um, so if that black Great Dane had one copy of dilute, we didn't do DNA test because it wasn't available back then. So that little bitty recessive dilute is just screwing with us every generation. It's just going one puppy to one puppy, one puppy. Since it wasn't bred to another carrier, it will never show up. So now we're talking 40 years ago. We have this line of dogs that carried this one dilute gene, and then all of a sudden we met it up with another, and that carried from down from either the Neo or the Great Dane or some dogs that had dilute in it, and we can't deny that these dogs existed. We can try to and say this is some pure race brought down from the heavens 400 years ago, but that's bullshit. So when these dogs meet together, they're going to produce these blue puppies. Now, if it happened 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, maybe people were just, they were gone at that. But we don't kill dogs for color for the most part nowadays. It's ridiculous. So no, yeah. I mean, there's right, yeah. So we now can do DNA testing that helps us identify these and not breed them together, and that's what we should do so that we can get rid of this and move on with our lives. Same, I mean, liver. And quit getting surprises. People are going to continue to get the surprises, and unfortunately, the surprises sell for more money, so people are going to start breeding for them. I mean, liver happens this exact same way. We know Dog de Bordeaux, Spanish Alano, some other dogs uh, that carry liver gene were used in the recreation of this breed or creation of the breed or whatever you want to say. And so we're just dropping that little liver gene down generation after generation until it meets another dog that dropped it down from generation. And then, hey, here we go. Liver is another thing that's popping up in the breed, and some are actually breeding for it. And again, we shouldn't be breeding for heavy white. We shouldn't be breeding for liver. We shouldn't be breeding for dilute. But we should be honest with ourselves and say, hey, this stuff happens. How do I stop it? Or, I mean, if it's selling for more money and people are breeding for it, then we can see what their goal is. But $130 genetic DNA test, and you've stopped yourself from breeding that, unless we make mistakes, which, I mean, we do. I've, I've, I've made a mistake. I've made lots of mistakes, but one really big one. But so no, it's it's unconsequential to anything, but it's yeah, and sometimes a disease will be in there, and you just didn't know it was in the other dog, even had you test it. It's just weird. So we don't deny the things that are possible in the breed. We can just identify them and get rid of them. But this is how something that this is popping up, and the problem it's popping up a lot, and people say, "Oh, where it just can't come from nowhere." It didn't come from nowhere. It came from foundation breeds, and there's too many foundation breeds to not deny almost anything. So the big three of those are dilute, liver, black and tan. Black and tan inherits the same way. So I'm starting to get black and tan dogs, and trindle is just a form. Trindle is where the tan points are brindle instead of being tan, and those are just popping up. It's easy. They're easily explained if we understand how these things can just float along. They can go from generation to generation, and they don't evaporate. Genetics don't expire or dissipate, none of that. So we can deny it all we want. And 15 years ago, I was that denier. Oh no, we can't go. I mean, this stuff wouldn't still be popping up from back then. So see, I was not that bright. Not that long ago, I was not that bright either. Yeah. So Embark will tell you that they test back 3 generations, which people think, okay, so if we tested only 3 generations, whatever that exact breed says it is, then that's all we will know about this. But that's not how it works. So 20 years ago, if there was say there was a, shoot, 20 years ago, say there was a Great Dane in it. Now, sure, 20 years ago, we're not, that's 10 generations ago. We're not going to see that specifically, hey, there's a Great Dane in there. But every generations, that Great Dane has dropped a little bit of DNA into the next generation. It may be so diluted that 20 years ago won't show up. But just because we went back 3 generations, it won't say a dog 4, 5, 6 generations is not still dropping a little bit in there. So we do know what's before 3 generations based on their dropping their DNA. So it's not exactly accurate to say the way it reads that we only see 3 generations, because we will see the DNA from those other dogs. They don't That doesn't go away. It just keeps dropping into the next. The dilute can be from whenever the foundation of the breed is. If it's a dilute, like Weimaraners or whatever, that they're an older breed. That's many generations. But I'm not talking about necessary dilute. I'm talking about breed makeup at this point. Because if the Great Dane was 5 generations ago, um, once it got to the fourth generation, if the fifth generation was a Great Dane, the fourth generation would be half Great Dane, right? So the third generation is still a big part of Great Dane, right? So that generation, even though that dog at that third generation says Presa Canario, it is still going to say, we're still going to be able to see that there was a different breed in there. So it's not accurate to say that it goes back and then just stops at 3 generations. We are getting information from every generation, still crossing the next. It's hard to explain, and I may just be not a very good teacher, but and we did touch on a little bit that if this breed was put together by a one or two people or a group of people who had a singular goal, we're going to use these breeds and make this breed, and that's how most breeds are done. We have a very unique situation, in that we had, like I said, we had hundreds of people who had different ideas, different goals, access to different dogs, different islands. We're talking about different islands. Some of these islands 50 years ago didn't mess with each other. You know what I mean? They still don't mess with each other in some cases. So one island had a different goal. The other island had a different goal. There's 20 or 30 breeders with all different goals. So for Embark to catch up to all the different combinations that could still be Presa. So if they're finding Ridgebacks, Bulldogs, all these other Alanos, Spanish Mastiffs, which is not what a Presa is, it's on all these other breeds in it, they're going to need to see more information, more generations of dogs added before they can learn every combination that makes a Presa. So if you're getting mixed breed, I wouldn't stress about it that much. If it's, I mean, unless you're getting Chihuahua and Pug or something like that. But some of those, if the breed if the breed mixed in there is something that we can assume was used in the creation, it's yeah, they're learning by our they learn by what we submit. So if we're submitting, yes. Mhm. So I know of some people. I actually don't know. I've heard people tell about this, but I don't know of a single person who has called to Embark and said, "Hey, my dog came back mixed. What can I do about that?" And then they changed the result back. I don't know anyone who has successfully done that, although I've heard people talk about that. So if I'll be live while this is going, if somebody has that and wants to talk about it, I'll be able to answer that in the comments or whatever. I didn't realize that this podcast actually worked as a live broadcast. But at any rate, they submitted their dog and it came back with a partial one other breed actually, and so they asked to have it submitted. This actually is overseas breeder. They called Embark to say, hey, this is a registered dog. They said, well, what we will do is offer free tests for the parents. And unfortunately, the breeder of those parents wouldn't do it. So what Embark wants to do is get DNA from the parents of that dog, so that they can learn and get info of it. So that breeder was not, yeah, they were not successful in theirs. But if like one of mine If one of mine came back embark, I've had two wisdom panels come back as different breeds, but I've never had an embark one from me or a buyer, not one buyer. But if a buyer came to me and said, "Hey, my results were weird," I would look to see what breeds they were and what combination their dog was, and then I probably would say, "Hey, embark, this may be something. This may be a learning moment, and I'm willing to test." In my case, sometimes I can I can give them access to 4, 5, 6 generations if they wanted it, and that would help them learn. The people resisting embark are actually hurting everyone. So it's not a lab. Yeah, it's not a lab. Yeah, yeah. We'll do. We put too much info on one slide, so we'll be better to make the font a little bit. So the colors that are important to us are fawn, black dominant, brindle, mask, white. Those are the ones. Those are the acceptable ones. Silver exists in our breed. Dilute exists in our breed. So those are the ones. I'm not going to talk about Merle or some of the other things that the breed doesn't come into. Harlequin, Merle, stuff like that. So fawn is the base coat of most breeds, and in our breed, with the exception of black, it's the base coat of all of our dogs. All the brindle dogs are fawn underneath the brindle. Fawn dogs are all absolutely fawn. So fawn is the A locus. A locus has at this time four different alleles, possible alleles: AY, AW, which is AY is fawn. It's technically a agouti, but I'm going to use our language, but a little caveat. So if you go to bull mastiffs, they have apricot and all kinds of other different colors and names for it, all the same. It's all fawn. It's different shades of fawn. It could be anywhere from super deep red to a really light, looks like white beach sand. So that's all fawn, and we're just going to use the word fawn when it's technically agouti or sable. So fawn is AY. Go ahead. It certainly presses. If they're fawn or brindle, they're technically fawn under the brindle because brindle is a marking, not a color. But most dogs are also fawn. A lot of dogs are also fawn. So fawn is a big one, and then dominant black is a big one in all breeds. Those are the two. Those are the two main ones. So there's four different alleles. The locus is a locus. That's the top. So there's two alleles that each dog will have from that. But in the fawn case, there's four available. AY is fawn. Wolf sable is AW. We do have that in the breed. Black and tan is AT. We do have that in the breed. And then recessive black is A. So that also, or E, yeah, no, lowercase a. So recessive black, which we don't have in the breed, that lives on the A locus. A little bit confusing, but we don't have to worry about that because that's super rare in a very small amount of breeds. German Shepherd, Frenchie, and black and tan. Black and tan is not part of the breed standard. No. Um, Wolf sable is a shading. You wouldn't. Wolf sable is not talked about in the standard, and it's not allowed or disallowed because it would just be a shaded dog. It may explain where our dirty fawn is coming from. Yeah. Um, I do not have a sable carrier. Some people may know the Greta's 10K, I believe, is a wolf sable carrier. But my super dirty dogs, the ones with the widow's peaks, Uncle Morty comes. Yeah, Morty. She's a AT carrier, so AT carrier may have be coming out a little bit. That's where the it gets a little iffy. That sometimes a dog can express traits that it's only carrying one copy for. But some of these other things we do understand more than that. Liver, dilute, black and tan. We do understand how that is inherited more. So those are yeah, those things we're talking about are more pigment related than actually coat color related. But if you look at a brindle dog, it technically is a fawn dog. If you see the light points, the light part of the dog, that's the base coat. If you lifted up the stripes, which are always darker, so you lifted up the black stripes, that dog would be whatever color that base coat is. You can see the lighter color. So if it's a super deep, rich red color, that's going to be a really red dog. If it's a really light fawn or more like a grayish color, if you lifted those stripes up, that's going to be a fully gray or light, not gray as in blue, but a really super light gray or a white sandy beach. Think of that. So that's what color that dog's going to be. So, so yeah, so same. No, all brindle is fawn based. These are just stripes that are big. So a regular brindle has little stripes, and then you can see the base coat in between it. A reverse brindle has big stripes, and you can hardly see any base. So that's why we call it reverse. A normal brindle, since it's a marking and not a coat color, the brindle must be less than the coat color showing through because it's only a marking. So when we talk about reverse brindle, it's a reverse of that. The brindle is actually more of the base coat. So it's 50% of the dog is covered by these giant black stripes. That's a reverse brindle. In some cases, there might be one or two fawn stripes, and that's it. That's all you see. It's still a brindle dog. Yeah, okay. Yeah, mask is on top of mask would be the next thing up from the um, base coat would be fawn. Then Brindle would sit on top of that. Mask would be on top of that. So mask is inherited the same way, right? And it covers up the coat. So you can if you can see any brindle on your dog's muzzle up to the mask, it means that's the bottom. That's underneath the mask. So mask relies on intensity, partially part of intensity. So a full mask will be really intense, and a lacking mask. And if you can see, it's really easy to see a dog lacking mask on a fawn because if you just see like the outline of the face, the nose and the outline of the face is black, but you can see no other black on the face. That's still a masked dog, even though it just looks like lip liner. It still has a mask because a maskless dog, the lips would be like a fawn or wouldn't be any black on it at all. We actually, mm, well, they're inherited the same way, but they're not. They're on different. So liver is on B locus, dilute is on D locus, and chocolate is just part of liver. So it's actually kind of confusing to leave it there. I probably should have had that taken out. So like chocolate labs or liver chocolate, same thing. So they're different locuses. Liver is not technically a recessive, or not. It is a recessive. Sorry, scratch that. It's not. Liver is not technically a dilute, but it is a lessening of pigment. So it is kind of in the realm of things. It's a dilution of black down to a liver color. Yeah. A liver dog can have no black, a liver dog can have not one black area on its entire body. A dilute dog can have not one black area on its entire body. Dilute will have a blue nose, liver will have a red nose. That gives it away. Yeah. Yeah. White is something that is not 100% understood. The way it is inherited. It is, it can, you can carry for white and be fully white. You can carry for white and be just a little bit of white. White can hide. There's Irish white spotting. When we talk about spotting, that is how the genetics community talks about white spotting. Even if the dog is all completely, oh, got you. Yeah, so white's not really a color either. There's not a single. I'm glad you did this because it got my brain back on track. My brain's going. Cha, 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 cha. Go back to the last one. Yeah, we talked about it. Oh, this is the slide I want though. So white isn't the color. There's no animal or no dogs on the planet that are actually white. And when you see a white dog, it's one of two things. It's either a super light cream, which would be EE cream. Those are like Pyrenees in some cases, like Bichon, dogs like that. They're really super light cream. They're not white. In breeds like bulldogs, Presas, though in some cases Dogo Argentino, they're just white markings covering more of the body than not. So if you see a little bit of brindle right here on a dog, the rest of the dog is completely white. That means the dog is brindle, just because that one little mark. The white has just covered up the body, just gone crazy, just like white boxers. Boxers are genetically fawn, genetically brindle, and then the white flash has just gone crazy. And a dog in our the thing that helps doesn't help us from trying to figure out what happened is two completely brindle dogs that maybe have a little white patch on their markings. They don't have to have any white markings at all to produce these heavy white dogs. So it's yeah, yeah, okay. So yeah. So the spread of white, whatever pattern, whether it's Irish white, sorry, Irish white, my foot went to sleep. Irish white spotting, or then the other thing is piebald, which is what hits us a lot. Piebald is, marked like a cow. So the spread of white in every dog is the same. I can post this moving GIF in comments while I'm there. It will start at the tip of the dog. So the first thing you will see is muzzle, feet, chest. That's where white presents itself. And this is not breed specific. It's any dog that has that. And then as the intensity of that white is passed on to the dog, it will spread over the body. First, you will have full white muzzle, neck, full chest, belly, up the legs, tail, and then it will start to move in towards the core of the body. That's how genetics work. The more intense, the closer to the core it will get, and then eventually that's why you see these big, blotchy, spotted piebald dogs. That's just how it works. It's not something strange. It doesn't mean it was bred with a Holstein. There's no cow in the genetics. That's just how it spreads, and is if you just got the luck of the draw that this dog inherited a very intense white markings, it's going to be marked like a cow, and in some cases, it's going to be completely white. That doesn't mean it's polar bear mix. It's not like I said, it's not a Holstein. It's just how it works. It doesn't have to have a Dogo Argentino, although we know Dogo Argentino again is one of those mixes that they used back then. So we can't deny that that might be the source of it 40 years ago or even 20 years ago. But you see these breeders producing white dogs, they're just matching up the genetics that produce white, and the working dogs have it more than the show dogs. The show dog people community over in the islands needs all the praise in the world. If that's the type of dog you like, they're more consistent. But when you look at them, if you look at those dogs very consistently looking alike, they look less like what we see 20 years ago than the other dogs who we're struggling with consistency with. So that's something you have to ask yourself: do you want these little cookie cutters or what? Right. So these E locus, K locus, E is mass, K locus is that's where the black lives. Intensity, that's talking about whether the dog is, if it's a fawn dog, which this does happen to be a fawn dog, whether the dog will be red or it will be a sandy color. The intensity, that's where that lives. A locus, that's where fawn is. D locus, that's the dilute. B, that's liver. Saddle tan, we don't really have to worry about that. S locus, that's where the white part lives. You can see this dog. I'll go through what this dog has. Merle, we don't worry about the Harbin. We don't worry about that. So this is a fawn dog. She does have a mask. EM, dropped EM for both parents, so has a mask. KY means she's not dominant black. Her intensity is intermediate, so she is not a super red dog, but she is a red dog, a redder fawn. AY. So the K, let's go K locus, KY allow. So when we see KY on the K locus, that tells us, hey, go check out fawn. So whatever the fawn says, that's what's going to show. If this had KB on it, the fawn would not be relevant. It would be brindle. Yes. So if she was not, go ahead. Yes. Yep. Whatever you see. Yep. So she is a dilute carrier. If she wasn't, it would be two capital D's. Capital D again is dominant, lowercase d recessive. So that's how you read those things. She's not no liver carrier. She's SS means no white. She doesn't have any white on her. Merle is not relevant. Two capital D's. This is a brindle dog. See, in case of the mask, it can have one. It has the mask is not recessive. It only requires one. So this one has a mask. KB. This is a so there is some recent testing that's being done that's starting to differentiate between dominant black and brindle. We don't really do that. We can't. Embark doesn't do that yet. So we're a little bit of a disadvantage. KB in this breed right now using a bark, it can be brindle, can be dominant black, but capital K, capital B means dominant black. In this dog's case, right now it means brindle because they're not differential yet. This is a brindle dog with the mask. Red pigmentation is it's not no impact on this dog because the KB negated the fawn results. So we don't even care what fawn says at this point because this is a brindle dog. Dark hairs, this is a not non-dilute, non-carrier, DD, non-liver, non-carrier, saddle tan. Also another dog who doesn't he has a this dog has a little white, but it's not enough to express to like an SP was where piebald is coming in, where we start to see it really start to get a little crazy. Merle is again no problem with Merle. Merle won't happen in our breed. It will happen in our breed because there's somebody who's doing it, but we should know Merle is not. So this is a super dark brindle dog, and it shocked me to find out that he has no mask. I actually have a photo of him later. We can look at and it'll show you wouldn't know this dog didn't have a mask, but if you didn't DNA test, you see that you just keep passing on no mask, and all his fawn puppies, if bred to a dog with no mask, would have no mask, and you'd see it. So again, KBKY, this is a brindle dog. It could be in this result could be a black dog. Unfortunately, Embark is not catching up, but there is new research, and soon Embark will catch up to where they can differentiate between dominant black and brindle. Again, since it's a KB over here, a is this the same dog? Oh, since it's a yeah KB dog, the fawn is not relevant. This is both liver and dilute non-carriers. He also has little to no white, which is interesting with this dog because this dog has a heavy white dog in its background. But you see, he did not inherit that. He didn't inherit that. Yeah, this one does. Yeah, this one, as you can see, EM. This dog inherited one copy of the mask. That was enough. Has a mask. Will produce a mask again. KB negates the fawn. So this is a brindle dog. This one, no dilute. Most of mine are no dilute, no liver. You see SSP. This dog has a normal at the S locus, and then the SB came from the other side. It carries the white. So it isn't heavy white, but like you said, this dog has ability to produce up to 90% white. But you would look at the dog and say, no, it couldn't. I mean, our eyes would not allow us to believe that. It couldn't do that because people we just we didn't understand until, science and learning caught up to it. It was, yeah, the fawn, the mask would inherit the same way as the white. It will spread from the core. So when you see these dogs with a nice mask here, once the mask starts to spread with intensity, it can get all over the body, and that it has some link to carrying black and tan, carrying wolf sable. But you can see how these dirty fawns are carrying hairs at different points of the body. So dirty fawns. So here, the dog on the left is. We might have to go back to the other side in a minute. The dog on the left is the one who has no mask. Looks like it has a mask, right? It doesn't. Yeah, because he's dark brindle. If he was a light brindle, you would obviously see, and then his lips would not have. The dog on the right is a he does the fawn puppy on the right does carry a mask, does have a mask. So his ability to produce it is there. It's just way weak. So the dog on the left would not even, if it was a light brindle, it would not even have this black pigment on its lips. Mm. Yeah, his ability to produce the mask would be dependent on the mate you bred it to. But the fawn dog is fine. It would produce mask. You would just want to breed it with more intense mask. Obviously, fix that because that's awful. Go back a couple to the ones before the mask. Yeah, so mask can get very greatly covering just the end of the muzzle, like I said, the whole muscle, eyebrows, and ears. Obviously, on the we want it to go to the eyes and not past it. So when you see a puppy that has a mask that's a little bit beyond the eyes, that's good because mask recedes as they age. Shaded sables is where we come into the dirty fawn dogs. Are perfectly explained. It doesn't mean they're mixed with a husky or any bullshit like that. It's just an intensity. It's just how the things were inherited. Dogs with creeping tan, shaded sables. This distinctive feature of these dogs that are carrying just intensity for this, or the widow's peaks above the eyes. That's where people get to, oh, look, it's a husky. No, that's how this stuff is inherited. It's just a fact of life. No, it's just that it can when once you've dropped a dilute gene into a dog, it doesn't go anywhere. Any breed can carry it. Notable like the Weimaraner, or those come in only that, and that's where everyone thinks the dilute came in labs and stuff. But if you're talking about Neapolitans, I think even Alano has blue dogs, but the Great Dane, Neos, Corsos, they all have that. So it's not hard to understand where it came from. So okay, so white is again we can go into this. So a dog can be bullet points. A dog can have very little white yet still produce it. A dog can have heavy white in its background and then not produce it. It's just a matter of who you put together. Now, you see, piebald is recessive. Well, I didn't even explain what heterozygous and homozygous, which I meant to do earlier. But anyway, it's recessive. The dog can be any color with little to no white, three or four white hairs on the chest or whatever. And then all of a sudden, if you breed it to the right combination, here it goes, it'll produce that. Another thing that's popping up. So ticking and roan can be ticking the little spots you can see in the white. You can only see ticking in white really, and that's whatever color the dog was going to be. Those spots will show up in white, and this can happen in any breed. It's not breed specific. It just happens in some breeds more the German short-haired pointers. You think of that spotty look. Um, they're saying they're learning that what are those cattle dogs? Those are not necessarily merle. They're more ticking, but any white on any dog of any breed can have ticking. Roan is not relative to us. Roan might explain the cattle dog issue. Um, but the downside to white and breeding for white is when you breed for white, then you're going to get more and more white, and then the thing that will happen with white dogs is can cause some deafness. So when you see the white covering the ears, when there's no color on the ears, that how the white evaporates the color. It also affects the hearing. So when we start breeding for more and more white, we have to start introducing hearing tests, unfortunately. So that's a good reason to stay away from it. We should try to stay as close to standard white, but if we have an excellent example that has, so a dog has 25-30% white, for future breeding, I would try you select a good puppy from that heavy white dog that is proper amount for the standard, just because we want to obey the standard. But at any rate, if you do select something from a litter just because you either as a pet you want a heavy white dog, it's just your preference, or that's just the best damn dog in the thing, or the heavy white marks dogs are just stronger temperaments. Get one with color on its ears. Yep. Oh, so let's talk. So heterozygous. We talked about the recessive. So those lowercase b that we use in the example above, those two lowercase b's, those that would be homozygous dilute because they had the same letter. See what I mean? Heterozygous will get one dominant and one recessive. So it'd be a capital D and a lowercase d. That would be heterozygous, singular. Homozygous would be two of the same. Yeah, all dogs are either one of those two on every locus. Every locus you can describe as that. So, and some of the examples I used above, like the mask, you got one masking from the mother and didn't get it from the father. So that would be homozygous. Heterozygous because it's singular, and homozygous would be if it inherited both. EM. Yeah. So yeah. So that's just another way to call the how they inherit things homozygous. There is a reason we brought this up because this is the good one. So fawn to fawn means homozygous fawn. AY. It can literally not produce any other color but fawn. If any other color comes out, one of two things was possible. There's a different parent that the people didn't know about or lied about, or oops, whatever the hell happened, or the dog is not actually fawn. It can be so light brindle that it maybe there's one little baby stripe or one little hair, one little grouping of hairs that made it brindle, and it's just low intensity. But if you did a DNA test, you could see it's KB on the K locus, which again deletes the fawn part. So that's where genetic testing would help us. But if it's genetically fawn, two genetic fawns cannot produce any other color. A black to black can produce black or brindle, probably even, I don't know, depending on the parents. I think that can also produce fawn. Brindle and brindle can produce fawn and brindle, but cannot produce black. Brindle and black produce brindle, fawn, and yeah, no, not in our breed. With dominant, our breed is dominant black. So with dominant black, it has to have a black parent. So if you see black coming out of two brindle parents, then there's something fishy. So that's so, and then so, and then in all of these cases, the dogs can have white or they can have not white. The white is separate from all of these other colors. If a black dog can be white marked or not white marked, it's the same exact thing. There is no basis for someone to say, well, in our breed, they can be black, but they have to have white markings. That's failed knowledge. It's not. I mean, it may be maliciously so those people can say, "Well, I have the only black dogs," but more likely the case they just don't know yet. Just like I said earlier, hey, at one point I didn't understand how recessives worked every generation. They just don't know yet. If the dog is black with no white markings, same exact genetic thing other than the S locus, which shows how that happened. And in some cases, they can have white markings and still not carry any white. That's that's how it gets confusing. But any amount of white can be on any of these dogs. No white. Just same as brindle with no white can be a pressa. Brindle with white can be a pressa. Black with white can be pressa. Black and no white still pressa. All the same thing. You moved on. Did you move on to diseases on purpose? Because I'm not. Okay. Go back so I can remember. So the one thing I wanted to say about heterozygous versus homozygous, brindle and fawn. Brindle can cancel fawn if it's homozygous brindle. So homozygous brindle will not allow fawn to show no matter what the female is. So it won't let fawn show. It won't let fawn show. I call them fawn cancelers. Casper was one of those. Hero was one of those. So you'll see all of their progeny, no matter what they're bred to, never produce anything but brindle. Right. Yeah. But then if you breed a homozygous brindle to a fawn, then their offspring can produce fawn. You just erased it for one generation. That lateral generation. That we know of. Okay, so the diseases, most diseases are inherited the same way. Certainly, the diseases that we have to worry about in our breed, the same way as the color. Both parents have to carry in order for the dog to be affected. Affected would mean the possibility of disease, just because a dog. And that's not even 100%. If the dog gets two copies of a disease, doesn't mean 100% affected. It just means it could be. But if it has one copy of the disease, it's not affected with the disease. There's no possible way it can pass the disease. It's not a sick dog. It can't produce sick puppies. It has to be matched up with the same. The mother has to have the same thing as the father, and they pass it down. And then, like the example above, they won't necessarily pass it to every puppy. It would be scientifically 25% if they're both carriers, same as the color. And then, if even if they have two copies, they're not all going to be immediately affected. And let's go further down the rabbit hole to understand that most diseases are incomplete compenetrants, means they do not affect all breeds. Matter of fact, most of those don't affect but a few breeds specific. And Embark goes through and lists under those diseases what breeds they affect. And they even further break it down to say these are relevant to your breed, not relevant to your breed. So when you see a test listed on there that says, hey, your dog is a single carrier of this variant, and then underneath it, it will list all the breeds that affects. So we dismiss that. It's not something that affects our breed. The only thing that affects our breed, um, listed in the list of tests, is CMR1. And then again, it have to have two copies in order to possibly be affected, and then some of those will be affected. So we do have to pay attention to CMR1. That's That's eye disease. I don't know what exactly it means. I should have looked it up. but, I mean, it's in a bark. If somebody wants me to get what it actually means, I can post that in the comment sections. But I literally, until recently, I had no dogs that even had one copy of that. So I'm pretty sure it's eye related. I don't know that. Like I said, I can look it up. That's the only one that the mark lists as relative to our breed. They are starting to list. No, that's not true. Okay, so the first thing that we'll look at, I know it's listed last, but I think yeah. This is the first dog I ever tested, and not the last dog, but pretty close to the last dog. So you will see that on the dog on the left has 183. She's clear for 183 of the diseases. That's what they tested. I'll go back. So when I tested this dog, they only attested for 183 diseases, so they only tested her for those. Fast forward, this she was tested in 2018. So fast forward 6 years, they're now up to 255 different diseases. So when you see somebody's test that shows a really low number, that's not because they didn't, they failed those other tests or they didn't test for that. Well, it technically is because they didn't test for that. But as they add more tests, if you have an older dog, they're not going back and testing for those things. In some cases they are. In some cases they're not. So we're up to 255 diseases. So that easily explains how those can be not the same. And that's not nobody. Oh yeah, yep, yeah. They will probably, as long as they're a company, they will. Um, so it's nothing nefarious if you see somebody say, "Hey, why is my test say 250 and yours says 170, 190 or something like that?" It's just an older dog. This is an example of the disease test. So notable results. So the first thing is a summary. This is what this dog will carry. I went and got this. This is actually a friend's dog that had the most things that I could find and it's still only three things. So our breed's pretty healthy. But at any rate, this is what it shows total the dog's a carrier of. It's not, this particular dog's not affected by any of them because it's only a single variant carrier. It has the CMR we talked about, DM, which is a lot of presses have, but you can see identified in Airedale, Eskimo dogs, and then if you open that up, it would also list the other things that it, the other dogs that it, the arrow to the right, you would click on that and it's going to list the other breeds. The German Shepherd is big on this one. Again, laryngeal paralysis. I think that is maybe something that our breed can be affected by. So they'll learn that and eventually add that to it. But identified in bull terriers, many bull terriers, you open that up, it will show the other dogs. So these are just single variant carriers. The dog is not sick. It can't be sick. It can't pass. Its puppies won't be sick based on this dog's results. So the next one, this is this, this is, go ahead. This, you just wouldn't breed this dog to another dog that carries these things. But in all reality, Embark would say just don't breed it to another CMR dog because that's the only one that's relative to our breed. You understand what I mean? You see, this is the same dog. Once we, up there on the very top of the thing, it says summary, breed relevant, and then other. So summary was the total thing, everything the dog carries, no matter if it's affected, if this breed is affected by that or not. You know what I mean? The next thing we toggled over same dog to breed relevant. And then all those two other things disappeared because it's not breed relevant. All it shows is the canine, the uh, CMR1. You see, identified in pair with the Crescent Canario. It means this test is the only one of these three things that you as a breeder should worry about. So we would not, while I personally would never breed two carriers of any disease together just because I don't want to do that in case something pops up to where it does become an issue. What the science is telling us is do not breed two dogs together with CMR1. That is only thing that is identified. So let's just not breed carriers together and all of that. That's my recommendation. You can do with that what you want. But we definitely don't breed CMR1 dogs. And in my mind, a CM1 carrier is perfectly fine to breed. Breed that dog. But if I'm doing puppies and there's a couple, if I'm going to pick a puppy out of this one, I'll test the whole litter. And if there's two I like, sorry, I might breed, I would try to keep the one that didn't carry. Then I just got rid of it. Yeah. So no, right. But back. I'm not done with that. That's okay. So this other dog, you can see she's clear of everything. Then another thing that it drives me crazy that that Embark lists ALT activity level as sort of a disease because people do think it's a disease. It's not a disease. It's information. So alt activity, alt is when you go to the vet and they do blood work on your dog. Alt is the liver values that's one of the blood tests they would do for the alt liver values. It's liver related. So alt activity in these dogs can be high or low, normal, completely normal. So I use myself as an example because it's easy for me to understand. My normal blood pressure is low. I don't have the disease low blood pressure. This has just been my baseline my whole entire life. So what that says to me is I need to tell my doctor that my normal blood pressure is low so that if then they read my blood pressure and it shows normal blood pressure range or maybe even slightly elevated, that wouldn't, for a normal person, the doctor would say, oh, that's fine. But me, that shows there might be a problem, right? So a dog with an alt liver value that is normally baseline low that now shows on a blood test and normal alt level to other dogs, or maybe slightly elevated, a vet might say, oh, that's no big deal. We won't even worry about that. But in this low normal dog, that now becomes a deal. So now the vet needs that information to say, okay, so it's normally low. So if they get sick and it shows a normal or slightly high, then this indicates a bigger problem. Could be a bigger problem. So this is just information, but there's people out there I have seen legitimately using alt activity against people. Oh, this dog carries or it has two copies of this, and that's a disease. So that's one of the reasons that I don't. I don't let my stuff be public anymore because a lot of my dogs have the different alt liver values, and people use that against you. It's just, people with ignorant people with just a little bit of information can be dangerous. So I just turn my stuff off. If anybody wants to see any disease or trait result from any dog I own, I will happily post it. I don't gatekeep that stuff. It's no problem. I just don't have that on hand for people. Oh. So my vet isn't very open to that stuff. They think that they don't put much stock into it. But Jenga recently had an issue, and she had an elevated alt liver value, and she's normally low, so that did indicate there might have been some issues with it. But I've never had a dog be sick or be negatively harmed by that. It wasn't helpful in her case. It was not related to what she had. Yeah. Yeah. So DNA tests are $130. It's one of the easiest ways to see what's in the dog, and why wouldn't we want to? I see a lot of different things popping up that could have easily been avoided. Whether the people wanted to avoid it, that's another conversation. But if you don't want to if you don't want to produce off traits, just get it identified and don't breed those together. Super simple. The disease thing is invaluable, while the breed ID not so valuable. But the more we add, the more that's going to get valuable. But the traits of these testing and the genetics, the diseases part of this thing, that's been pretty solid for decades. So we can trust it. Right. Some more than others. We're actually gonna, yeah, we're actually gonna do six. These episodes are pre-recorded and they work a little bit like a live, but not technically like a live. But tomorrow yeah, tomorrow Monday, um, I think it's the 19th. At 6 p.m. We're gonna be an actual live to where we'll be able to answer questions on. We're gonna talk about the the purity of this breed and how pedigrees have been screwed up for so many so many generations that we'll talk about. Yeah, hopefully I can be less. I calm down some, but yeah, I'm ready. Thanks.